In this exercise, I'd like to focus in on positioning key compositional elements in your image. We've already discussed how we want to use simplicity and how asymmetry is important in creating, movement and moving the eye across the screen. And now I'd like to just focus in on a little bit more detail on that, is placing key elements in the image. And we're going to look at some images we've seen before and some we haven't seen yet. Let's start with an image that we know is a winner, and this is the Kodiak wave image. And here, the two key compositional components really are the wave and the mountains. And when I set up this photograph and I was shooting it, I was really focusing in on and concentrating on having two offsetting elements, and that is the wave, and I wanted the left side of the wave to be over on one side of the image, and then the main portion of the mountain on the other. And the reason why I like to do this in a lot of cases is that helps move the eye across the image. So the eye concentrates over here on the wave, and then boom, it's drawn into the background. So it provides an element of dynamic vision to the image. It forces the viewer or encourages the viewer to look across the image. And I employ this technique in a lot of my portfolio images. Here in the ice dancing image, I have my icebergs up front, and notice the primary iceberg is offset to the left a little bit, using what we've talked about in terms of asymmetry. And then the eye moves from left side back over to the right side. And then I have the trees positioned in this image, the main portion of the trees back over here. You see there's a concentration of these aspen trees over on the left-hand side. So it kind of encourages the viewer's eye to move across the image. So it's very conscious of this placement. Here, we'll do a total switch of types of images, and we'll look at a couple of scuba diving images. In this case, when we're talking about photographing in scuba conditions, where simplicity is so darn important because very often the water is not crystal clear, and it's very easy to end up with complex images. So I try to take very simple composition images, and in this case, I've got two main elements. I've got the sea fan that's over on the far left-hand side, takes up most of the image, and then offset in the back, and it's screened back to give you a sense of depth, is the scuba diver. And of course, the eye starts here and then moves to the back of the image. So the attention to positioning is important. Here's another one which with similar composition, but in this case, I'm taking advantage of color as well as positioning. So I have the big sea sponge. This is shot down at about 90 feet. So it's pretty clear for 90 feet, but I used a flash here to illuminate the foreground so you get the nice warm colors and the positioning of foreground, middle ground, and then the background with the diver. This 1, 2, 3, really paying attention to the position and separation of those elements. Again, moving the eye across the image. And here in a landscape image, and this is Red Mountain across Ketchimek Bay where I live in Homer, again, I'm using this compositional placement technique where I have the dark green spruce trees, the well-lit autumn-colored aspen trees over in the lower left-hand corner, and then boom, the Red Mountain in the upper right-hand corner, again using this opposite lower left, upper right placement to move the eye across the image. And all the compositions, of course, are simple, and that placement is part of the asymmetry. And in an image like this, with Mount Iliamna in the background shot from Anchor Point Beach in Alaska, I use almost the opposite technique. Here I've got Mount Iliamna in the background, and notice the major peak up at around 11,000 feet. This goes from sea level to 11,000 feet. That's a lot of elevation change for a mountain. And this is one of 5 volcanoes across Cook Inlet. And we have the main peak here, and then we've got the sub-peaks over here. And in this case, I placed the foreground rocks so that they kind of mimicked this landscape, where this major rock mimics the Iliamna, and then these smaller rocks here, in a sense, mimic the sub-peaks we have over here on the left-hand side. And again, as we've talked about, whether you're doing artwork or commercial photography or just doing snapshots, and here's a picture of the lovely Zip and me out skiing, and the same compositional elements, the same techniques apply. You want to have good asymmetry, and here we've placed the two of us in the lower right-hand corner and made room for the eye to move back. And it's Iliamna in the background, by the way. So image placement is not just about asymmetry, but it's about placing elements so the eye moves from one place to the other. And then, of course, no presentation of key elements would be complete without a picture of Zip hiking in the Yukon. And here, I placed Zip in the image a little bit to the left of center and gave him some room to look and move down the image. And of course, Zip is the focus of this. But I also wanted to make this kind of an environmental portrait where you could see the beautiful mountains in the background, but not one on top of the other, but offset a little bit left and right. So there's some things to think about in terms of placing key elements in your image.